Hey guys, it's Northeast Benefactor.
What? This isn't an EWOW self-analysis.
I hear you say, but just because I have a series doesn't mean I can't branch out. I want to get one thing very clear right now. Quirky Burger is also making an EWOW video, and if we had the same idea I did not copy it. Great minds just think alike. Also, I'm using a more casual editing style, because this is a more casual video. My PNG tuber arc has not stopped. Anyways, do note that this will not be a step-by-step tutorial on how to make an EWOW response for a specific prompt, but rather some universal tips when creating a response in general. First of all, the most important thing to remember when making an EWOW response is to be as creative as possible. You should always try your hardest to think of something original and clever when forming a response. If you go with the first thing that pops into your head, chances are that a lot of others thought of something similar. I usually like to wait to respond until I have something really good going about my day normally while thinking about the prompt, but do what works for you. Another important thing to note is word count. While you can make responses that are less than 11 words according to the rules, people typically place your response lower if it uses less words. Try to aim for that 11-word mark, and if you aren't sure if your response is 11 words, use Carrie's code that he linked in the description of EWOW 3B. Finally, make sure to always have proper grammar, capitalization, and spelling in your response, as people also tend to vote responses with incorrect structure lower. Grammar is the most important of those to keep in mind, as incorrect grammar could make the idea you're trying to convey less clear. If you aren't a fluent English speaker, this may be difficult, but there are plenty of tools online that you can use to check all three of those things. Just make sure not to go on any sketchy websites, lol. Now, if you want some strategies that work pretty consistently, allow me to introduce you to the A.R.A, aka the holy trifecta of response structures. A.R.A stands for acronym, rhyme, and alliteration. Essentially, these are three things you can do that voters absolutely love to see in responses, but they may be difficult to get right. Making your response an acronym means to have the first letter of each word in your response spell out a different word. The EWOW4 prompt forces you to make an acronym, but doing that in other prompts can also work well. Rhyming means that two words in your response should rhyme with each other. For example, the winning response from EWOW3 was, "The books aren't dead, they just need to be reread." If you still don't believe me, remember that Chalk placed my rhyming response second out of 11 simply because it rhymed. Finally, alliteration means that every major word of your response starts with the same letter. This one works the worst of the three in my opinion, but that doesn't mean it's bad. In my opinion, you should only resort to these methods for three reasons. The first is if the prompt requires it, of course. The second is if you're low on lives and want something that'll likely work to at least keep you in the game. Finally, you should use them if you can't think of a response you think is creative enough to warrant passing up on one of these. Typically, a very creative response works better than all of these. However, remember that in the early game a lot of how you do depends on what voters are voting on your response, how they think, and what they want to see in a response, as it differs from person to person. But what kind of response should you make? You want a direction in your response, right? Maybe something funny, maybe deep, maybe heartwarming. Well, I'll say that 9 times out of 10 trying to make a funny response will get you more points than trying to make another type of response. If a prompt is more serious, then you may want to go with something different, but most prompts offer opportunities for some sort of humor, and it's best to work with that. There are a lot of different ways to make a funny response, but let's go over some of the most common. First off are puns or wordplay. Essentially, you want to make something that relates to the prompt and put it in place of another word, or have a common phrase have a clear double meaning. Chichinits, for example, name different types of cephalopods in the winning response, then capitalized pod and cephalopod to indicate that it was meant to be a pun on how cephalopod has the word pod in it despite not really relating to what most people think of as a pod. The other commonly used strategy is much more dangerous, however, as its viability depends on the voters more than the response content itself. You may have guessed it already, but it's saying something random. Now, this strategy can be very good for the early game, as it can be so rewarding as to net you a life if you get lucky with the voters. However, overall I would not recommend it. as by EWOW 5 there will begin to be more voters voting per response due to the response window shrinking once again without influence by people just not submitting. These voters will likely rate your response lower on average, as even the ones who like the XD random responses will tire of them by this point. So, if you want a humorous response, I'd recommend either using puns or wordplay, or just going with a normal joke, no tricks at all. And try to have it be as funny as possible while still being sensible. And that's all. Do remember that these tips aren't guaranteed to work, but are just suggestions for making a higher quality response. A lot of it still comes down to how creative you can be and what you come up with. Now, I thought of something fun for the end of the video that I could do. I want you to respond to the prompt I give like a normal EWOW response in the comments section, and I'll give you feedback on what you did well and what you should improve. If I come off as harsh, I apologize in advance, but please understand that I'm not belittling your creative ability. I just want to help people improve if they need it. Alright, now, in 11 words, respond to the prompt. How does one find success when making EWOW content? I look forward to seeing your responses, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.